Shudder Sundays, episode 33. This week we are going into the houses October built, but the 2011 version because I messed up. I put the poster of the 2014 one. Again, this is the problem with Shudder sometimes. I don't know if the other one was on there as well or not, or maybe I just kind of grabbed the wrong poster when I saw Houses October built. But anyways, we're going to do the 2011 version, which is, I think you said...
The director's cut.
Director's cut slash first iteration kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
The original footage, pretty much, before we got the theatrical cut in 2014.
Yeah, and they reshot a lot of it, but yeah, this was a found footage slash documentary. The interpretation is sort of up to you, but yeah, we're going to talk about the 2011 version. This is directed by Bobby Rowe, who was an All-American pitcher at UCLA. Didn't know that.
Fun fact, I didn't know that.
But yeah, this was very DIY style. This was Brandy as Brandy, Zach as Zach, Bobby as Bobby, Mikey as Mikey, Jeff as Jeff. It's all this little close-knit. All the people from the 2014 version as well. They were in this 2011 version. So why don't you give a short little synopsis of this one, and if you want, you could also touch on the 2014 one and kind of show some parallels of that.
Yeah, so 5 friends are on the road making a documentary on extreme haunted houses in hopes of finding out the dark secrets that lie within the industry. So, how Nick mentioned, we're doing the 2011 version, which was kind of the original version. Comparative to the 2014 version, I feel like this one kind of goes a little more in depth on the documentary side versus the found footage side. They do a lot more interviewing scare actors, some of the owners of these haunts and stuff like that, versus kind of focusing more on the blue skeleton haunt that they were seeking out in the 2014 version.
Yeah. Yep. So Shudder Skull rating for the 2011 version. What is the Shudder Skull rating?
So from what we saw when we watched this together, it was a 2, but last time I checked this morning when I was back on Shudder doing a couple notes, it was a 3 skull.
Oh, so it went up to a 3 overnight?
It went up to a 3 overnight.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what the skull rating is when I do the screen grab for it down here. But Rotten Tomatoes, they didn't have any scores for the 2011.
Right.
So I pulled the 2014 one just to kind of give you a feel for it. But so what did you think the critics gave The House October built?
74.
60%.
60.
Yep. A little bit lower. And the audience, what do you think the audience gave this one?
An 80. 79. Lower? I feel like a lot of people liked it 54.
31%.
31. You guys are a bunch of absolute haters.
It was certified rotten.
Absolutely diabolical.
Now, because this was the 2011 one, and the 2014 one, they're both pretty low budget, so it's a little bit harder to find like notes and stuff on it. But I did catch a interview from Dread Central that came out 6 months, and they interviewed them, Bobby and I believe Zach it was, about the original. And some notes that I kind of pulled from that was they started pitching this movie in 2009, which was kind of right at that peak of found footage. We had, the Blair Witch was in 99, so that was a little bit earlier, but it definitely kind of got people interested in this genre. But you had Record in 07, Paranormal Activity 07, Cloverfield 08, Quarantine 08. So there was just a lot of going on. I think Record was in 09 as well, too. Was there 2 of them, maybe?
I think there might have been 2 of them that came out.
But yeah, it was definitely that early 2000s was like a found footage blow up right there. So Bobby said that this was it was a fun note to going into our other, not our other channel, but the episodes that we normally do. Bobby did specifically mention Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah.
He did say that outside of really Knott's Scary Farms and Halloween Horror Nights, people weren't really too familiar with haunts.
Yeah.
Like the haunt attraction world. So this was kind of why it kind of fueled the fire as to why they wanted to make this movie a little bit. And they did it all themselves. They bet on themselves. It actually opened for Eli Roth at the Shock Fest in LA. He was receiving a Director of the Decade Award.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
So a fun part that night they premiered it and it went really well. So then after it was received well, Bobby told the guy running the fest, and this was from him, to kill the Q&A. They didn't want to do a Q&A because they got the vibe of like, wait, they thought this was the documentary for real, and then the ending, like, it's really tough in this day and age to do. It's kind of like wrestling, the kayfabe. It's like you have the story, and like with Blair Witch, social media, internet wasn't where it was today, so it was a lot harder back then. Like people were like buying it. They're like, oh, was this real? It had that like plausibility that this was actually happened, and because it was received so well at the end, where everyone was sort of questioning, like, wait, what just happened? He said
they didn't want to ruin it.
They didn't want to do a Q&A and like and blow the magic up, and they wanted to kind of just take it right there. But then they killed the lights in the theater, and it was pitch dark, and everyone had glow sticks underneath their chairs. And that was how they had to get out.
That's fun.
And from all that I saw was like they never really said this, whether this was a documentary or a film. So that's sort of it danced in that realm of realism where, and he made note of it too in this interview, and it was funny because we were doing the same thing. They were using all real places, like real haunts. So you would search it, and it's real. So you're like, wait, so is it a documentary? Is it a film? Versus if they just made up fake haunt names and fake people, you a quick Google search nowadays, and you're like, that doesn't exist. It's a film. But with this, you search it, and you're like, oh, wait, this is... So you get to the halfway point, and you're like, okay, like, this is real then. Like, it's a real documentary. And then the ending comes, and you're like, wait, is that real too? Like, what? How did this come out? It's a very interesting way to pull a blanket over everybody's eyes in this day and age where it is a little bit trickier to do that. So that was really all the notes I really had. Typically we go through the movie a little bit more, but it really was just, this version was just a documentary essentially.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a better movie or documentary to talk about without going at it piece by piece, because I feel like it's more better as like a conversation piece, like kind of as a whole. I feel like it's a little bit easier.
So we'll jump right into the categories then. So the good, what did you have for the good of The House is October Built?
Obviously, I've seen the 2014 version before this 2011 version. I think they released this on Shudder maybe a year or so ago. I follow Zach and Bobby on Instagram, so I keep up with them pretty frequently, and I know he was excited to have this version finally out there for people to watch. But the acting and the chemistry between all five of them, obviously they were all friends before this, they made this film documentary together, it just makes it feel so much more like authentic, and like they were so comfortable behind the camera. And even when you have these more indie films or indie documentaries, even when these actors do have that relationship together, sometimes it comes off a little corny or a little maybe too...
Feels forced.
Kind of forced, that's the word I'm looking for. It feels a little too forced. But with them, I feel like they were all meshed really well together. The comedy aspect that they had, the banter kind of back and forth was really good.
I'm going to stay alive. I have small boobs.
Towards the end where they get in the house, or when they're on the bus going to the Blue Skeleton, and Bobby's like, don't worry, we're not that far out. And they're like, how the hell do you know how far out we are? Like, you've never been here. But I also really like the idea that they had with making a documentary based on going to different haunted houses and visiting different haunts. Obviously, that's something that's right up our alley. And I know you'd mentioned it previously. I really did enjoy that they used actual haunts, which is cool. Some I was familiar with, so I knew these were legitimate ones, but we were looking them up as we were watching. I was like, oh, this is real too. This is real too. And I'm like, it just adds that factor to it of it being more enjoyable too.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the acting was good too. Obviously, the core group was good, but what I thought was really good was the on-camera interviews with the people. Obviously, these aren't actors; these are just the people that run the haunts and stuff like that. So, even if they framed it as a documentary, like, "Hey, we're going to interview you about the haunt industry," whatever, not even telling them it's a movie at the end, it still came out pretty genuine, because you could even just
100%.
interviewing real people about what they're really doing can still come off awkward. Like, it just sometimes it still feels forced or fed, or people just aren't camera ready, which is fine. But this didn't really have any of that. All of them were comfortable. So it's just such a weird world. Like, they're not acting, they're being interviewed, but it was, edited in the purpose at the ending that it was just a film, really.
That all these interviews felt authentic and natural, because usually, there we go, that's what I was trying to get at. When this film came out in 2011, they probably started filming a couple years before.
Probably in that 2010 part.
Social media wasn't as prevalent then, so we didn't have people content creating and going to these haunts and interviewing these people and doing all this kind of stuff. So for that not even being that notable at that time. It's really cool to see that it was so, yeah.
A little groundbreaking. The pioneers. The scouting and the sets were really cool. Obviously, they kind of played to their strong suit of like, we're going to frame it as a documentary so we could film in the houses. So you get all the set designs. Somebody else is doing your work for you.
Yep.
They're not dressing sets. They're not building anything. They're going to already prefabbed, up and running haunts. So it's not like they were. It was very smart. They did it really smart. So that's what I had. Other than that, it's just tough to pull like good and bad and this and that from essentially a documentary. You know, that's really what this was. At face value. Obviously, they flipped it in 2014 and kind of added more story. But this version was primarily just a documentary, essentially, up until the last 15 minutes.
I am glad that they did release this version, though, because I do really like the theatrical release, the 2014 Houses October Built, and the second one as well. So it was fun to compare them side by side and see the things they switched up or added in.
Yeah. So the bad then. What did you have for the bad of the Houses October Built?
It's unfortunate because, like I said, I do really enjoy the Houses October Built in these films. It was just a very slow burn, this one, compared to the theatrical release that we had. I feel like there was a lot of build-up for the Blue Skeleton. It was kind of mentioned here and there, as it is in the other film also. But we only really got to see that suspenseful, scary kind of extreme haunt that they were looking for this whole documentary, probably for the last like 15 or 20 minutes. So I feel like if they maybe the last 45 was added from them being there, taking the bus, going there, all that kind of stuff, I think it would have worked better. And I feel like the ending was kind of a little bit rushed. I feel like we had this buildup of waiting to get to the Blue Skeleton. It was pitch black, no one could see anything. They gave you the glow sticks, all that kind of stuff. And it kind of just left us with a little more questions than answers, I feel like.
I think that is a budget thing. I think they were like, wow, you know, everything else, right, was at haunts, so like they don't want to go to another haunt and frame it as a Blue Skeleton. So like, you know, just kill the lights. It's going to be super dark. Like, you know, we really could film it anywhere. It's pitch black. I get it. For them at this point in time, 2010, 9, whenever they filmed this, I get that that's the direction. You know, they kind of wrote around their budget, I'm assuming. I'm assuming they wrote their script based off their budget, which was probably close to zero, you know, or whatever money they had amongst the 5 of them. But yeah, no, I marked that as a bad as well a little bit too. I mean, but you just got to call it for what it is.
Yeah.
I put, you know, if it's a movie, it's too slow. If it's a documentary, it's still a little too slow. When you watch the documentaries, there's still a story woven into the documentaries that bring you up and down. You know, it's a little bit different nowadays because it's more, you know, with the Netflixes and streaming services, documentaries are more episodical now.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a word, but
I think it is.
sounds good.
Episodic, maybe?
But episodic, sure. But they do have like peaks and valleys, and they base that off what episode. But even still, with a full feature-length documentary, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is, there is still a little bit of a climb. And everything just felt pretty linear on this one. It was like haunt, 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 haunt.
Yeah.
No real story. Interviews were all pretty much the same. And you said, you know, they kind of sprinkled in the Blue Skeleton a little bit. But the problem with this one was, like, people were wearing, like, Blue Skeleton merch and stuff like that. So it's like, if all we know from Blue Skeleton in this movie was that they captured them, put them in the room, and we're assuming killed them. So, like, where are they selling merch? Where's the gift store? Like, where's, you know, like, why are people surviving and being put out there?
You've seen the other Houses October Built, though,
I
right?
do, but it's been a long time. So those are pretty much our plants to get people to go there.
So the ending of the other one was that Zach and Bobby and everyone set up Brandy to really scare her, and that they were all in on the Blue Skeleton thing, and they brought her there to kind of like scare and get good footage for the film. Yeah.
So it was just fake.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while.
Maybe one of them can answer for us.
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw the 2014 one. And I always confuse. I'm always like, is this? I kept calling it the Blue Angels, but that's I think when you like.
I think this is the airplane.
That's when you put a lighter up and you like fart. I think that's a Blue Angel.
Maybe.
But yeah, between like this Hell House, Haunt. I
don't think I've seen Haunt.
And there's another like pretty well known haunted house found footage style movie. I always kind of confuse them a little bit, but yeah, I put that as the bad. It was the pacing was a little bit slow, whether you wanted to say movie or documentary, either way. You know, I know it's real DIY, but the camera quality was still a little meh. There was a couple shots where it
Kinda
was
added
like
to it, I
very
feel like.
blown out. But again,
A lot of this was filmed in the dark too, and a lot of them was in the houses, so I figured the quality wouldn't be as great. But
and I get that adds to the realism too. So like, take it or leave it. Did you have any other bad at all, or?
I know you had mentioned you really liked the interview parts. I kind of wish that they had focused more on the houses itself versus the interviews with the people. It was fun when they were doing the interviews with the scare actors and stuff like that, but I feel like when they had the interviews with the owners of the haunts and different stuff like that, I felt like it got a little bit repetitive because Brandy kept asking like, oh, like what's the real factor? Like how far do these people go to like make it more real or like make it more extreme? And I feel like it kind of was just the same conversation with the same people. But with the scare actors' point of view, you got to see their creepy mind working and all their kind of like behind the scenes stuff, which was nice.
That goes into what I was saying, where it was kind of like linear. Like every interview was the same. There was no other. It was the same questions. Same. Oh, I'm the owner. I'm the owner. I'm the owner. I'm a character.
Yeah.
And that's it. But yeah. So the top moment. What was your top moment of Houses October built?
Honestly, I would probably say my top moment is it's not really like a extreme top moment, but I do feel like it's kind of an Easter egg. One of the, and it made me happy watching it, one of the first haunts that they go through, if I'm not mistaken, I think it might have been Michael and Brandy going through the house and not Bobby and Brandy because they had him go through in twos. But whoever was filming kind of panned over of one of like the static figure like scare actors or like mannequins or whatever they had. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the same little girl, like doll face looking girl that follows them in the 2014 version.
Okay, I didn't catch that.
Yep. And then there's one quick scene too when they're in the haunt with all the skeleton faces on the wall and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah.
That they have the one like figure standing in the back with the blue skeleton mask.
That's pretty cool.
I just love little Easter eggs. That's just me. But.
I just picked. I viewed it more as a movie versus documentary. So in that sense, I picked just the ending.
Yeah,
like
I mean
that last little dark scare. It went a little long, but that was the only like heightened fear factor for me.
Also, when they're in their RV and then the bus pulls up to take him to the blue skeleton, and Zach's like, "Oh, okay, now I'm fucking down. We're doing this," and they're like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah, but that's what mine was. Yeah. So, what would you change about the Houses October build 2011?
I feel like with this one, it's hard to say what you would change about it because I feel like the things I would change about it, they did change, and it's hard to compare because this is definitely more of an indie documentary filmmaking, and I feel like the theatrical 2014 was definitely made for film. So they both have their pros and cons. But I mean, I feel like the only thing I would change was the slow burn to die down a little bit and maybe, like I said, that last 30 or 45 minutes, add a little more oomph, a little bit more suspense to it.
Yeah, I kind of, two answers. If it's a movie, changed exactly what they did to make the 2014 one. I like that movie. I think it's about as good as it can get. If it's a documentary, change the pacing of the interviews to kind of at least...
That's a good one.
At least give us those peaks and valleys of questioning and kind of divvy the questions up a little bit better, and you can kind of find what story you want to tell, and you could tell it through that versus just interviewing people at haunts and being like, how long you been here? What's it like to run a haunted house?
Right.
Yeah, it got a little redundant at that point. But so who is this for?
I feel like this is for anyone who likes documentaries, found footage movies. If you're into exploring different haunts around the country and stuff like that, then this one's for you. It's very, very good Halloween movie.
Yeah, I put Halloween. I wouldn't even want to trick you and say if you like found footage movies, watch this, because it's really not.
Watch the 2014 if you like found footage.
And I put it for people that have already seen the 2014 one. It is fun to go back and be like, oh, I can see like the birthing process of this movie, because
we gotta watch it again too because we haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, it's real interesting because there's not a lot of movies that are like feature length indie documentaries, and then like 2 or 3 years later they're like, let's redo the whole thing and kind of like make her. Some start out that way. You know, Terrifier was a short, and then kind of All Hallows Eve, and then they kind of reworked the franchise a little bit. But it's an interesting thing. I think it's fun to see the evolution of ideas.
It is fun,
and it was cool seeing it translate from kind of what it was as this like Blair Witchy, like we're gonna try to make a documentary, but leave people questioning it at the end. It was fun. So our fear and beer rating fear scale 1 through 5, how scary this film was, and a beer rating of 1 through 5 of how good or how much you enjoyed this film. So, Jamie, what was your fear rating for The Houses October Built?
For a fear rating, I gave this a 2. And that's only probably for, it's not scary per se, but the last ending part that we'd already mentioned is probably the scariest bit of it. It does build a little bit of that suspense because as someone who does get scared in haunted houses every now and again, especially being in the pitch black, it is a creepy scenario to be in, especially, which was their whole theme of the movie. Is this real or is this not real, you know? So
I give it a 1.5.
Okay.
It's just
fine.
not that scary.
Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, for House October Built 14, I'd probably put it in the 3 range.
Yeah, that was
three and a
little
half.
bit scarier.
You know, just because they did master that storytelling a little bit better. So your beer rating of 1 through 5, how much did you enjoy this?
I gave this one a 2.5.
2.5?
And I don't want that to come across as a bad rating because I didn't think this was bad per se. I just personally like the other version better, but I do enjoy seeing Bobby's process behind this one and seeing what the film has become now.
Yeah. I matched my same score. I did a 1.5 as well. And again, kind of like you said, like, it's not really indicative of how much I think this idea is a good or bad idea or whatever. I mean, clearly they remade this movie, so they didn't really think that this was the best version either, or else they would have just left it as is and kind of been like, all right, cool, we're done with that. So I think it's just, and maybe it would have been a 2 if 2014 wasn't a thing. If that movie wasn't a thing, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more. But knowing that they evolved and created this I much better movie, I think, in 2014, that I think they're kind of maybe in the same boat as us, where it was like, okay, this was a, you know, we tried something, we were really onto something, and then we kind of, once we completed it, we realized we could pivot and create a better movie.
Yeah.
So that's what we have for that one. So a little bit of a shorter one just because this is a trickier movie to pull. But we are going to continue our halfway to Halloween month next week. And we are going to be diving into what I just mentioned, kind of All Hallows Eve.
Oh.
As long as that's still on Shudder.
Yeah,
Because
right?
we never really know.
If not, it looks like we might be having To Be Tuesdays or
Yeah,
something.
something. We'll see. But, yep, well, that's it. And we'll see you next time.